such as Chauncey Billups, Damon Jones, and Terry Rozier were taken into custody today. Former, current NBA players and coaches.
Chauncey Billups, Damon Jones, Terry Rozier, all taken into custody, current and former NBA players and coaches. The NBA is in absolute chaos. Mid-game raids that shocked fans. Players led away in handcuffs. The league has seriously never seen anything like this. What started as just whispers about secret bets and shady deals has exploded into a full-blown federal crackdown. We're gonna break down the NBA's biggest gambling scandal ever. NBA getting raided over a gambling scandal. October 23rd, 2025. The NBA season just tipped off, like literally just 2 days into what was supposed to be an exciting new year. Fans are going crazy about Victor Wembanyama's insane 40-point season opener. The league's riding high on optimism. Everything seems perfect. And then, in the early morning hours, the other shoe drops. And it drops with the force of 1,000 freaking thunderclap. Federal agents, moving with military precision across 11 states from coast to coast, descend on homes and hotel rooms. They're not there for autographs, folks. They're there to arrest more than 30 individuals in what would become the most significant corruption crisis the NBA has faced since the 2007 Tim Donaghy referee betting scandal. Among those taken into custody, a sitting NBA head coach, a current all-star caliber player, and a former player with seriously deep ties to the league's biggest superstars, such as Chauncey Billups, Damon Jones, and Terry Rozier were taken into custody today. Former current NBA players and coaches. What you might not know yet is that this is an illegal gambling and sports rigging operation that spanned years.
Just Chauncey Billups, Damon Jones, and Terry Rozier were taken into custody today. Former, current NBA players and coaches. What you don't know is that this is an illegal gambling operation and sports rigging operation that spanned the course of years.
Let me paint the full picture for you, because this story is absolutely wild. We're talking about FBI Director Kash Patel himself holding a press conference. And that's something you almost never see unless we're dealing with something truly, truly massive. This wasn't just a handful of people making bad bets. No, no, no. This was an organized, sophisticated criminal enterprise that had tentacles reaching into 4 of New York's 5 freaking infamous mafia families. The Gambino, Genovese, Bonanno, and Lucchese crime families. The FBI didn't just name this operation something boring. Oh no, they went cinematic with it. The sports betting arm, Operation Nothing But Bet. The poker rigging scheme, Operation Royal Flush. And when federal authorities unsealed those indictments, the sports world collectively gasped. Let's break down exactly who got caught in this massive dragnet. First up, we have Terry Rozier. Now, Terry is a 31-year-old guard currently playing for the Miami Heat. This is a guy who has earned approximately $150 million over his NBA career, $150 million, and yet prosecutors allege that he was leaking non-public information about his own game availability, essentially telling his associates when he planned to exit games early due to injuries. The detail here is chilling, man. In at least 3 games, including a February 2023 matchup where he informed co-conspirators he would leave early, Terry allegedly set up a situation where bettors could place massive wagers on under-prop bets. What does that mean? It means they were betting that Terry would score fewer points, grab fewer rebounds, or dish out fewer assists than the sportsbooks predicted. And if Terry knew he was leaving the game after just 9 minutes, well, that's a guaranteed freaking winner for those bets.
One example occurred on March 23rd, 2023 in Charlotte. Terry Rozier, an NBA player now with the Miami Heat, but at the time playing for the Hornets, allegedly let others close to him know that he planned to leave the game early with a supposed injury. Using that information, members of the group placed more than $200,000 in wagers on his under statistics.
Federal prosecutors claim that in one instance alone, co-conspirators placed over $200,000 in bets. When those bets paid out, the proceeds were allegedly delivered directly to Rozier's home, where the group sat around counting their cash. Like a scene from freaking Goodfellas, the audacity is mind-blowing. Here's a professional athlete making $26.6 million per year, risking his entire career, his reputation, his family's future, for what? A cut of $200,000 in betting profit. Now, Terry Rozier wasn't arrested at home in his pajamas. Oh no. The FBI arrested him in Orlando, Florida during the Miami Heat season opener against the Orlando Magic. Can you imagine being a Heat fan at that game? You're excited for the season to start, you've got your jersey on, you're ready to cheer, and then you find out that one of your team's key players was just hauled away in handcuffs by federal agents. That's the stuff of nightmares for a franchise. And Terry Rozier isn't even the biggest name in this scandal. Enter Chauncey Billups, a name that carries serious weight in the basketball world. Chauncey is a Hall of Famer, the 2004 NBA Finals MVP, a 5-time All-Star, and currently the head coach of the Portland Trail Blazers. This is someone who has been at the pinnacle of basketball for decades, a respected voice in the game, someone young players look up to, and yet he was arrested at his home in Portland the morning after coaching the Blazers season opener, which Portland lost to the Minnesota Timberwolves, a leading team. But here's where Chauncey's situation gets different and arguably even more disturbing.
The so-called face cards included the defendant, Chauncey Billups, who at the time of the scheme was a former NBA player and is currently the head coach of the Portland Trail Blazers, and also Damon Jones, a former NBA player and coach. What the victims, the fish, didn't know is that everybody else at the poker game, from the dealer to the players, including the face cards, were in on the scam.
He wasn't charged in the sports betting scheme like Rozier. No, Chauncey's troubles stem from the poker rigging operation. According to federal prosecutors, Chauncey served as what they call a face card, essentially a celebrity draw used to lure wealthy victims, referred to charmingly as fish, into illegal high-stakes poker games that were completely rigged from top to bottom. Except, according to the indictment, the entire game was a sophisticated fraud. The dealers knew what was happening, the other players at the table knew what was happening, and Chauncey, according to prosecutors, he knew what was happening too. You weren't there to play a fair game of poker. You were a mark, a target, a fish being reeled in to be cleaned out of every dollar in your pocket. The third major NBA figure arrested is Damon "Mookie" Jones, and he's the only one of the three who appears in both indictments. Damon is a former 11-year NBA veteran who played for teams including the Miami Heat and the Cleveland Cavaliers, and he served as an assistant coach after his playing days. But what makes Damon's case particularly explosive is the allegation that he was selling insider information about some of the league's biggest superstars.
I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg. I think when you talk about arrests being made by the FBI, I think the guys that are arrested are going to sit down and, be scared to death with what they're facing, and they're going to start to cooperate, and they're going to.
According to the indictment, Damon allegedly provided information about Player 3 and another Lakers star regarding their availability for at least 2 games in 2023. Multiple sources have identified Player 3 as LeBron James, though that hasn't been officially confirmed by prosecutors. One specific incident involved the February 9th, 2023 game between the Lakers and the Milwaukee Bucks, where a star player unexpectedly sat out and massive bets were allegedly placed based on that non-public injury information. This is what makes the Damon Jones situation particularly concerning for the NBA. He wasn't just involved peripherally, he served as a bridge between NBA insiders and professional gamblers and organized crime figures. And given his history, Damon reportedly lost millions to gambling addiction after his playing career ended. You can see how someone in that vulnerable position might be susceptible to the pressure and promises of people who knew exactly how to exploit him. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver, who had long advocated for legalized sports betting, found himself in an incredibly uncomfortable position during his first public comments on the scandal. Made during an Amazon Prime video broadcast on October 25th, Silver admitted he had a pit in his stomach and described himself as deeply disturbed by the allegations.
You do not see something like this happen. Even when the scandal came down the pike, involving Tim Donaghy, the former referee for the NBA, you didn't see the director of the FBI having a press conference about it. But that's what we saw this morning.
But here's the uncomfortable truth that critics like sports columnist Bill Simmons have been quick to point out. You can't have it both freaking ways. You can't flood your product with gambling partnerships, make billions of dollars from betting companies, plaster odds on every screen, and then act shocked when people within your organization get caught up in gambling schemes. It's like opening a bar in your office and then being surprised when someone shows up to work drunk. And make no mistake, this isn't just about 3 guys making bad decisions. The indictments detail involvement from 34 individuals total, including 13 members and associates of 4 major mafia families. We're talking about professional bookmakers, tech experts who built card-reading devices, enforcers who collected debts through violence, and a whole network of straw bettors, people who placed bets on behalf of others to avoid detection. This investigation, which began in earnest in early 2023 when the FBI was first alerted to unusual betting patterns on Miami Heat games involving Terry Rozier, has now exploded into something far larger than anyone initially imagined. And according to federal prosecutors, this is just the beginning. The investigation is ongoing and more arrests could be coming. High-tech cheating and insider trading. Let's start with the sports betting operation, officially dubbed Operation Nothing But Bet. At its core, this scheme was elegantly simple, but devastatingly effective. NBA insiders with access to non-public information, injuries, rotations, game plans, player availability would leak that information to professional gamblers and bookmakers. Those gamblers would then place massive prop bets on legal betting platforms like FanDuel and DraftKings, wagering on specific player performance outcomes that they already knew were likely to happen or not happen.
I can't tell you what that top card is, but if I pop in contact lenses, or if I'm wearing my poker glasses, when you look at that card through that filter.
Now, what's a prop bet, you ask? Great question. Prop bets, short for proposition bets, are wagers on specific events within a game that don't necessarily relate to the final score. For example, will player X score more than 20 points? Will player Y grab more than 8 rebounds? Will player Z dish out more than 6 assists? These bets became incredibly popular after sports betting was legalized because they give fans more ways to stay engaged throughout a game. But they also created a massive vulnerability. Think about it from the perspective of someone like Terry Rozier. If Terry knows he's gonna fake an injury and leave a game after just 9 minutes, and he tells his gambling associates this information before the game, those associates can place huge bets on the under for all of Terry's performance props. The sportsbook might have set Terry's line at, say, 15 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists. But if Terry's only gonna play 9 minutes, there's almost no chance he hits any of those numbers. That's free freaking money for anyone with inside information.
This deck is marked invisibly on the side with a barcode. So when this deck gets shuffled and gets placed onto the table, this camera right now is scanning those cards. And
according to the indictment, the schemes targeted at least 7 NBA games between February 2023 and March 2024, with bets totaling over $200,000 per incident. In some cases, the focus was on manipulating prop bets using information that the public didn't have access to. Court filings detailed a string of suspicious bets tied to several NBA matchups. Among them were multiple Miami Heat games in February and March 2023, notably featuring Terry Rozier. Investigators also flagged a February 9 Lakers vs. Bucks game when a star player sat out unexpectedly. Other games under scrutiny included several Portland Trail Blazers matchups, along with contests involving the Charlotte Hornets and Toronto Raptors. But here's where it gets even more calculated. The conspirators didn't just place one big bet under a single name, because that would immediately raise red flags with the sports books. No, they were smarter than that. They used networks of straw bettors, essentially proxies, who would place bets on their behalf, spreading the action across multiple accounts to avoid detection. And when the bets paid out, which they frequently did because the fix was in, the proceeds had to be laundered to avoid detection by law enforcement. The indictment alleges that winnings were moved through peer-to-peer payment platforms, bank wires, cryptocurrency exchanges, and good old-fashioned cash exchanges. Remember that detail about proceeds being delivered to Terry Rozier's home, where the group counted their cash? That's the kind of brazen confidence that ultimately gets people caught.
You're hanging out with the wrong people different times, and people are connected to the mob, and you get comfortable with somebody, you think they're your friend, and the next thing you know, they have something on you, or you're in an enormous amount of debt to them for some reason, and they have their claws into you, and they're going to put pressure on you to do things for them in regard to, information so that they can continue to make, millions and millions of dollars.
Now, the mob's role in all of this can't be understated. The indictment specifically names members and associates of the Gambino, Genovese, Bonanno, and Lucchese crime families. These organizations laundered the betting proceeds, enforced gambling debts through threats and violence, and took their cut of the profits. One particularly violent incident mentioned in the indictment involves Anthony Gaspike Gallardo, a Gambino enforcer who allegedly assaulted a rival underground game operator with a baton in October 2023 to protect their gambling territory. This wasn't just white-collar crime. This was organized crime in its most traditional sense, with real violence backing up the money. But as wild as the sports betting scheme was, the poker rigging operation, Operation Royal Flush, somehow manages to be even more outrageous. This is where the technology really starts to sound like science fiction. Beginning as early as 2019, defendants orchestrated an elaborate scheme to run rigged poker games across the United States, including high-profile locations like Manhattan townhouses, the Hamptons, Las Vegas, and Miami. Buy-ins for these games ranged from $10,000 to $100,000 per seat, attracting wealthy businessmen, celebrities, and anyone with deep pockets who wanted to rub elbows with professional athletes. The technology these criminals used is absolutely mind-blowing.
I know everybody that's at play, and I don't like to sit up here and be hypocritical about certain things. Every year they would give us forums on what and what not to do.
Let me walk you through it. First, they used off-the-shelf card shuffling machines that had been secretly modified to read the cards in the deck. These machines could predict which player at the table had the best poker hand and relay that information to an off-site operator via cell phone. Second, they employed poker chip tray analyzers, essentially poker chip trays with hidden cameras that could read cards placed face down on the table. Third, and this is where it gets truly James Bond level, they used special contact lenses and eyeglasses that could read invisible markings on pre-marked cards. Imagine sitting at a poker table looking at what appears to be a regular deck of cards, having no idea that the person across from you is wearing contact lenses that let them see exactly what you're holding. It's basically X-ray vision for poker. Fourth, prosecutors revealed the existence of what they call an X-ray table, a poker table with technology built into it that could read cards face down through the felt surface of the table.
You have to realize gambling is an addiction. So the addiction of it is what makes you make illogical decisions.
And finally, they had what's known as an analyzer, a device that looks like a cell phone but uses a hidden camera to scan a deck of cards and determine which player will win the hand. No matter how well the deck has been shuffled, the technology would literally tell them the outcome before a single card was dealt. But the technical sophistication was only part of the equation. The scheme also required human elements, specifically people to execute the con. The setup involved what prosecutors call the quarterback, a person at the table who would receive information from the off-site operator via cell phone and then secretly signal that information to the other conspirators at the table. Everyone was working together, coordinating their bets, manipulating the action, all while the victim, had no idea they were being systematically cheated. And this is where Chauncey Billups' alleged role as a face card becomes so important. The presence of someone like Chauncey, a Hall of Famer, an NBA champion, a Finals MVP, gave these games an air of legitimacy. Victims would see Chauncey at the table and think, well, if a guy like that is playing, this must be a real game. They had no idea that everyone at the table except them was in on the scam.
This ain't got nothing to do with damn gambling addiction. This ain't got nothing to do with addiction. These dudes are stupid.
You do not see something like this happen, even when the scandal came down the pipe.
The poker operation allegedly generated profits in the tens of millions of dollars over several years, with individual games netting over $500,000 per night. The mafia families involved took their traditional vig, usually 10 to 20% off the top, while the organizers and face cards split the remaining profits. And when victims realized they'd been cheated, or more commonly, when they couldn't pay their gambling debts, the mob enforcers stepped in with threats, intimidation, and violence. One incident detailed in the indictment involved a gunpoint robbery to obtain one of the rigged shuffling machines. This wasn't a game, folks. This was serious organized crime.
You do not see something like this happen, even when the scandal came down the pike involving Tim Donaghy, the former referee for the NBA. You didn't see the director of the FBI having a press conference about it. But that's what we saw this morning.
An FBI confidential source wore a wire and recorded over 3,000 calls and meetings with targets, and even participated in some of the rigged poker games themselves, gathering evidence that would ultimately lead to these 34 arrests. That's an incredible amount of investigative work, building a case brick by brick over multiple years. What's particularly interesting is how these two schemes, the sports betting operation and the poker rigging, intersected. 3 defendants were charged in both indictments: Damon Jones, Eric Ernest, and Shane Hennon. This suggests that there was a broader criminal network at play, with people moving between different illegal gambling operations, sharing information, coordinating activities, and maximizing profits across multiple schemes. The scale is staggering when you really think about it. Federal prosecutors allege that the total intended losses from these schemes ran into the tens of millions of dollars. We're not talking about a few bad bets here and there. We're talking about a systematic, organized effort to defraud betting platforms, cheat poker game victims, and enrich both NBA insiders and organized crime families. And here's what should really concern the NBA and its fans. Federal prosecutors have made it clear that this investigation is ongoing. There's always a possibility of more arrests, according to the Department of Justice.
Defendants used other cheating technologies, such as poker chip tray analyzers, which is a poker chip tray that secretly reads cards using a hidden camera, special contact lenses or eyeglasses that could read pre-marked cards, and an X-ray table that could read cards face down on the table.
Other players remain under investigation, including former Milwaukee Bucks and Miami Heat guard Malik Beasley, though he has not been charged at this time. The case also has potential connections to the 2024 Jonte Porter scandal, where the former Toronto Raptors center was given a lifetime ban for disclosing injury information to bettors and who since pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit wire fraud. So the question becomes, how much deeper does this go? Are there other active players involved? Are there other coaches? Are there team personnel, trainers, or front office executives who've been sharing information? The FBI and federal prosecutors clearly believe there's more to uncover, and that should terrify anyone who cares about the integrity of professional basketball.
When people refused to pay, these defendants did what organized crime has always done. They used threats, they used intimidation, and they used violence.
The fallout and the future of the NBA. The arrest sent immediate shockwaves through the NBA, and the league's response was swift and unambiguous. Within hours of the arrest being announced, both Terry Rozier and Chauncey Billups were placed on indefinite administrative leave, with the NBA issuing a statement that they take these allegations with the utmost seriousness and that the integrity of our game remains our top priority. For the Portland Trail Blazers, assistant coach Tiago Splitter was immediately named interim head coach, thrust into a role he never expected to have under these circumstances. The Miami Heat found themselves without a key rotation player just games into the season. Both organizations released statements pledging full cooperation with federal authorities, but the reaction from inside the basketball community was even more revealing. On the night of October 23rd, ESPN's Inside the NBA crew, Shaquille O'Neal, Charles Barkley, Kenny Smith, and Ernie Johnson addressed the scandal during their broadcast, and their responses captured the range of emotions many people in the basketball world were feeling.
I know everybody that's at play, and I don't like to sit up here and be hypocritical about certain things. I homeboy gamble, Ernie. Bet it. We've been on teams. We played cards. We played spades. We played.
Shock's comments reflected the sense of betrayal many feel. These weren't rookies who didn't know the rules. Terry Rozier has been in the league for years. Chauncey Billups is a Hall of Famer who's been around basketball for decades. They receive the same educational programs, the same warnings about gambling, the same explanations about what constitutes a violation. And yet, according to prosecutors, they chose to ignore all of that. Charles Barkley was even more direct, calling the accused stupid and questioning how anyone making millions of dollars could risk it all for what amounts to a relatively small payday. But Kenny Smith offered a different perspective, arguing that gambling addiction is a real disease that can make people act illogically regardless of their financial status.
The other part is we have to realize gambling is an addiction. So the addiction of it is what makes you make illogical decisions.
Boston Celtics forward Jaylen Brown expressed frustration with how easily accessible gambling has become, saying that whole world was introduced a couple years ago, and I don't think they took players into consideration, especially with the accessibility and how easy it is to get in trouble. He called gambling a big problem, not only here but worldwide. The reaction from Congress was immediate and forceful. On October 25th, a bipartisan group of lawmakers sent a letter to Commissioner Adam Silver demanding a briefing by October 31st. The letter, signed by members of the House Committee on Energy and Commerce, demanded information about safeguards against gambling's corrupting influence. Senator Richard Blumenthal, a Democrat from Connecticut, was particularly pointed in his criticism, stating, "We have allowed the betting industry to corrupt sports, becoming more entrenched in every aspect of the game without meaningful national guardrails to protect fans and victims of gambling addiction." Representative Paul Tunko of New York called the scandal inevitable without federal oversight, drawing parallels to historical sports corruption cases like the 1919 Black Sox scandal, when Chicago White Sox players conspired with gamblers to intentionally lose the World Series. Perhaps no voice has been more prominent and more controversial in the aftermath of these arrests than Tim Donaghy, the disgraced former NBA referee who served 15 months in federal prison for his role in the 2007 betting scandal. Donaghy has been making the rounds on news shows and podcasts, and his message has been consistent and chilling. This is just the tip of the iceberg. In a Thursday, October 24th appearance on News Nation's Cuomo show, Donaghy predicted that the scandal would expand beyond the NBA into college sports, warning that "I think the next big scandal from here is going to be at the college level." Donaghy has also alleged that his own investigation was shut down prematurely, claiming that the FBI had identified 6 or 7 other referees who were potentially involved, but that the probe was ended at the highest level to protect the league's image. He's even produced what he claims is an FBI text message, suggesting that then-Commissioner David Stern had influence over the investigation. Now, it's important to note that Donaghy's credibility is highly questionable. Criminal justice professor Sean Patrick Griffin, author of Gaming the Game, has called Donaghy's mob claims self-serving absurdity with no concrete evidence. Donaghy himself was convicted, admitted his guilt, and has a clear motivation to deflect blame or minimize his own culpability. But even accounting for Donaghy's credibility issues, his core warning resonates with what many experts have been saying. The explosion of legalized sports betting has created unprecedented opportunities for corruption, and professional sports leagues may not have adequate systems in place to prevent it. One particularly interesting voice in all of this has been former NBA player and U.S. Senator Bill Bradley, who authored the 1992 law that banned sports betting nationwide. Bradley had warned just last year that increased gambling integration would lead to a major scandal, saying, "I think it will pervade the culture. I think there will be a scandal." On October 24th, he told the New York Times, "My confidence was premature. This is exactly what I feared." The potential legal consequences for those arrested are severe. Each defendant faces charges that could result in decades in federal prison. Wire fraud conspiracy alone carries a maximum sentence of 20 years. Money laundering, extortion, and Hobbs Act robbery charges carry their own substantial sentences. Both Terry Rozier and Chauncey Billups were arraigned on October 23rd and released on bail. Rozier had to post a $6 million home as collateral and surrender his passport. Billups similarly had to surrender his passport and is restricted from travel, except to New York for trial proceedings. Their attorneys have vigorously denied the allegations. Terry Rozier's lawyer stated, "Terry is not a gambler. He looks forward to winning this fight." Chauncey Billups' attorney declared Chauncey would never sacrifice the trust of his team. But as legal experts have noted, federal prosecutors typically don't bring cases of this magnitude unless they have overwhelming evidence. The fact that an FBI confidential source recorded over 3,000 calls and meetings suggests the government's case is extremely strong. Many expect that at least some of the defendants will ultimately accept plea deals rather than risk decades in prison at trial. For the end, the immediate challenges are: the league must restore public trust in the integrity of games. It must demonstrate to Congress and regulators that it has adequate safeguards in place, and it must decide what punishment is appropriate for those found guilty, with lifetime bans being the most likely outcome under the league's constitution. Multiple NBA teams held emergency meetings after the arrests were announced. The Los Angeles Lakers, for example, held 2 separate meetings led by head coach J.J. Redick to reinforce anti-gambling policy. Even the NFL issued gambling reminders to its staff and players on October 25th in a show of solidarity and recognition that this problem extends beyond basketball. The betting industry itself took an immediate financial hit. Stocks for companies like DraftKings and FanDuel dipped 2 to 5% in the days following the arrests, as investors worried about potential regulatory crackdowns or decreased public confidence in sports betting. Fan reaction has been intense, with hashtags like NBA boycott trending on social media and calls for significant reforms to how leagues partner with gambling companies.
The reason I'm mad at Kenny is, man, this ain't got nothing to do with damn gambling addiction. This ain't got nothing to do with addiction. These dudes are stupid. Why are they stupid? Under no circumstances can you fix basketball games. Under no circumstance.
Many fans expressed anger at what they see as the league's hypocrisy, promoting betting heavily, while simultaneously claiming to be shocked when betting corruption occurs. The historical parallels are impossible to ignore. The 1919 Black Sox scandal nearly destroyed Major League Baseball's credibility. The 1951 college basketball point-shaving scandal involving CCNY and other schools devastated college hoops. The 2007 Tim Donaghy scandal was the NBA's darkest moment in modern history. Each time, leagues claimed they learned their lesson and implemented new protections. And each time, corruption found a way back in. What makes this scandal particularly concerning is how it exploits the very feature that leagues have embraced most enthusiastically: prop betting. Unlike traditional bets on game outcomes or point spreads, prop bets are far more vulnerable to insider manipulation. A single player deciding to sit out or underperform can swing these bets dramatically, and it's much harder for sportsbooks to detect unusual patterns in the vast universe of prop betting options. Looking forward, the NBA faces several critical decisions. Should it scale back its gambling partnerships? Should it ban certain types of prop bets? Should it implement more rigorous monitoring systems, perhaps with direct oversight from state gaming regulators? Should players and staff be required to surrender their phones for regular inspections? Or would that violate their privacy rights? These are questions without easy answers. The ball is now in the NBA's court. The question is, what will they do with it?
And to me, it comes down to this. Trump is coming. He's coming. It's not hyperbolic. It's not hyperbole. I'm dead serious.
Cops recently stormed a luxury yacht, hosting one of the wildest NBA parties ever. Within minutes, the celebration turned into total chaos as over 300 players were detained. While the raid itself was chaotic, what triggered this sudden action is far more shocking than anyone expected. Cops bust massive NBA party. The party was meant to be private. No cameras, no press. Just some of the biggest NBA names blowing off steam on a $50 million yacht anchored off the Miami coast. Champagne was flowing, music was blasting, and security had orders to keep everyone else out. But around 2 a.m., everything changed. Police boats surrounded the yacht, floodlights cut through the dark, and officers in tactical gear swarmed on board. Within minutes, the party turned into a full-blown crime scene. Players were lined up, cuffed, and questioned, and as it turned out, the reason for the sudden raid ran far deeper than anyone thought. It all started from a recent raid, one that will completely blow your mind. We're talking about the federal investigation that erupted on October 23rd, 2025, involving NBA insiders, organized crime families, and a web of corruption so deep and so sophisticated that it makes previous sports scandals look like child's play. This isn't just about a few players making some questionable bets. No. This is about a coordinated criminal enterprise spanning 11 states, involving mafia families, high-tech fraud equipment, and schemes that defrauded victims of tens of millions of dollars.
You have rehabilitated yourself. You're doing so many good things with what you know and what you understand. You are not surprised that this is going on, are you?
Not at all, but just to clarify something, I did not go to prison for fixing games.
Let me paint you a picture of what went down on that fateful October morning. It's early morning. October 23rd, 2025, and across 11 different states, FBI agents are simultaneously executing what can only be described as a massive takedown operation. We're talking about coordinated raids in Florida, Oregon, New York, and 8 other states, all happening at the exact same time. Hotel rooms are being raided, homes are being searched, and some of the biggest names in basketball are being placed in handcuffs. At 10 a.m. Eastern Time, FBI Director Kash Patel stands before a podium in New York City for a press conference that would send shockwaves through not just the basketball world, but the entire sports industry. And let me tell you, the fact that the director of the FBI himself is holding this press conference should tell you everything you need to know about how serious this situation is.
Definitely not surprised with what's going on. I think this is just the tip of the iceberg, like you said earlier. And I think you're going to see maybe more of a bigger scandal coming out of the college level, because you have these young athletes that aren't going to make it to the next level, and somebody's going to offer them money to maybe fix a game and only win by 12 rather than 15, and they're going to take that money because they're going to need a way to support their families.
Think about that for a moment.
Think about that for a moment. Even during the Tim Donaghy scandal back in 2007, when an NBA referee was caught betting on games he was officiating, we didn't see this level of federal involvement. But this was different. It was bigger and unprecedented. The numbers alone are staggering. 34 arrests were made across 2 separate but interconnected federal investigations. 6 individuals were charged in the sports betting case, while 31 were charged in the poker case, with 3 defendants overlapping in both schemes. We're talking about wire fraud, money laundering, extortion, illegal gambling, and even robbery charges being levied against these individuals. But here's what really makes this story fascinating and terrifying at the same time. This wasn't just some small-time betting ring operating out of someone's basement. No, this was a sophisticated criminal enterprise backed by 4 of New York's 5 mafia families, the Bonanno, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchese crime families. Yes, you heard that right, the actual mafia in 2025 connected to NBA players and coaches. Now, I know what you're thinking, the mafia? Really, in this day and age? Yes, and here's the thing. Organized crime never really went away. It just evolved, adapted, and found new ways to operate. And in this case, they found a perfect storm of opportunity in the intersection of legalized sports betting, wealthy athletes, and high-stakes underground gambling. Let me break down exactly what was happening here, because the sophistication of these schemes is genuinely mind-blowing. We're talking about 2 separate operations that were running simultaneously, and they were both incredibly elaborate in their execution. The first scheme, which the FBI dubbed Operation Nothing But Bet, was essentially insider trading for sports betting. Here's how it worked. Individuals with access to NBA teams, players, or coaches would provide non-public information to gamblers about when players would sit out games, exit early due to injuries, or have their performance affected by undisclosed ailments. These gamblers would then use this insider knowledge to place what are called prop bets, which are wagers on specific player statistics like points, rebounds, or assists before this information became public knowledge. Think about the advantage this gives you if you know for a fact that a star player is going to sit out a game before the betting lines adjust, or if you know that a player is going to exit early due to an injury that hasn't been announced yet. You're not really gambling anymore. You're just collecting money. It's a guaranteed win, and that's exactly what the FBI described as the insider trading saga for the NBA. But wait, it gets even crazier. This wasn't just about leaking information. In at least 3 separate instances, players allegedly faked injuries and deliberately exited games early to ensure that the bets placed on their underperformance would pay out. We're talking about active NBA players making millions of dollars per year, risking their entire careers and potential prison time to manipulate their own performance for betting profit. The scheme targeted 7 NBA games from February 2023 to March 2024, involving teams like the Charlotte Hornets, Orlando Magic, Portland Trail Blazers, Los Angeles Lakers, and Toronto Raptors. And these were not small bets. These conspirators were placing bets exceeding $200,000 per game, with some individual wagers reaching as high as $250,000. Now, as shocking as that insider betting scheme is, the second operation might be even more outrageous. This one, dubbed Operation Royal Flush, involved rigged underground poker games that operated in some of the most exclusive locations you can imagine: Manhattan, the Hamptons, Las Vegas, and Miami. These weren't your average Friday night poker games with the boys. No, these were high-stakes games targeting wealthy victims who thought they were getting the chance to play poker with former professional athletes and celebrities. Now here's the twist that makes this sound like something straight out of a Hollywood movie. These games were completely rigged using technology that sounds like it came from a James Bond film. I'm talking about altered shuffling machines that could read every card in the deck and predict which player would get the best hand. Poker chip trays with hidden cameras that could scan cards as they were being dealt, special contact lenses and eyeglasses that could read pre-marked cards that were invisible to the naked eye, and perhaps most incredibly, X-ray tables that could literally read cards that were face down on the table.
Bringing 4 of the 5 families together in a single indictment is extraordinarily rare. It reflects how deep and how far this investigation reached and the skill and the persistence it took to get here.
Can you imagine? You think you're sitting down to play a legitimate poker game with some famous former actors, athletes, and literally everyone at the table except you is in on the con. The dealer is in on it. The other players are in on it. Even the furniture is designed to cheat you. It's absolutely diabolical when you think about it. Sadly, the role of the NBA figures in these poker games is quite ridiculous. They were what the prosecutors called face cards. Famous people whose presence made the game seem legitimate and attracted wealthy targets who had no idea they were about to be systematically cheated out of their money. Victims lost at least $7 million in these rigged poker games since 2019, with one victim alone losing $1.8 million. Now you may ask, how about the mafia? Well, sit tight, because things are about to get really interesting. When these wealthy victims couldn't pay their gambling debts, or when they refused to pay after realizing they'd been cheated, that's when the organized crime families stepped in. These guys used threats, intimidation, and actual violence to collect these debts. 13 of the 34 defendants are alleged members or associated associates of these mafia families, including acting Bonanno Street boss Ernest Aiello, multiple Gambino associates, Genovese members, and Lucchese family connections. The FBI even revealed that defendants committed an armed robbery to obtain one of the rigged shuffling machines, showing just how valuable this cheating technology was to their operation. So now that we know about the mafia involvement, let's talk about the individuals whose arrests sent shockwaves through the basketball community. The fallen stars and their alleged crimes. At the time of this video, there are 3 NBA-affiliated individuals who are now facing some of the most serious charges you can imagine. These aren't just minor infractions or league violation. We're talking about federal crimes that carry potential sentences of up to 20 years in prison for wire fraud conspiracy alone, with additional charges for money laundering that could add another 20 years. First up, let's talk about Chauncey Billups. Now, if you're a basketball fan, this name carries some serious weight. I'm talking about a 5-time NBA All-Star, the 2004 NBA Finals MVP, and a player who had his #1 jersey retired by the Detroit Pistons after his playing career. Billups transitioned into coaching and became the head coach of the Portland Trail Blazers, a position that gave him access to inside information about team lineups, player availability, and strategic decisions. According to the federal indictments, Billups allegedly participated in rigged poker games and used his celebrity status to lure victims into these games. He wasn't just a participant. Prosecutors allege he was a face card, a famous person whose presence made the game seem legitimate and attracted wealthy targets who had no idea they were walking into a trap. But potentially even more serious are allegations related to his coaching position. An unnamed co-conspirator matching Billups' description allegedly tipped off gamblers that the Trailblazers would tank a March 24, 2023 game against the Chicago Bulls, providing information about which players would be rested. Over $100,000 in bets were placed on Portland to lose, and they did badly by a score of 24-96. Think about what that means for a moment. A head coach, someone entrusted with the competitive integrity of the game, allegedly provided information that his team was going to throw a game. That's not just gambling, that's potentially match fixing at the highest level of professional basketball. Billups was arrested in Oregon and released on substantial bond after surrendering his passport. The NBA immediately placed him on indefinite leave, with assistant coach Tiago Splitter taking over as interim head coach. His arraignment is scheduled for November 24th in Brooklyn, and his Hall of Fame status is now under review. Next, let's talk about Terry Rozier, who currently plays guard for the Miami Heat. Scary Terry, as he's known in the basketball world, is a 10-year NBA veteran who was making solid money, certainly enough that you'd think he wouldn't need to risk everything for some extra cash on the side. Rozier was arrested in Orlando and charged with wire fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering. His alleged crime strikes at the very heart of competitive integrity in sports. On March 23, 2023, when Rozier was playing for the Charlotte Hornets against